So, traffic is one of those things I never understood. And it always bugged me. You see these huge metal hunks that are cars. And this is true for the US. The rest of the world, it's different. But on the US highways, you see these big lumbering vehicles, sedans and SUVs, even the small ones. And there's only ever one person inside of. Like 99% of the cars I see on the road, especially at rush hour, there's one person inside the car. So why do you have that car for commuting? And especially if you look at a person's driving throughout the week, it's mostly driving alone to work and back and then getting groceries. Why can't we all drive cars that have two seats? Like for instance in tandem, right? Then the cars would be a lot skinnier and two cars can fit in a normal lane. So a 2-lane road would actually be a 4-lane road. And that might reduce congestion in traffic or eliminate it altogether. Also, they would be like much better for the environment because you would basically half the weight of the car. It'll probably be a little more than half, but and then the big fallacy is that like, oh, people wouldn't buy these and it's a free market, so people like the company that dares to make such a car would like go bankrupt. But that's not true because it's all about the government and the media. If the government and the media work together, they can instill anything they want and the people will follow. That's the truth. So for example, if I'm not saying the government should ban like sedans and SUVs, although that would obviously be effective, but or maybe not be effective, I don't know, because usually people don't like things getting taken away from them. But what if the government said, okay, here are some really, really major incentives to companies who build these cars, and then also major incentives to buyers who buy these cars, right? Then a lot of people will do it. And it's not just about the money, especially if the incentives were good. It's about the clout that comes with these incentives. It's like, oh yeah, I drive a Tesla. I can go, do you know, people like saying, do you know, I can go into the HOV lane for free because I drive a Tesla. They like that. Never mind, and they also like the implication that they're so intelligent, right, that they save the environment with their cash because they bought a Tesla, and they're proud of it. So even if a Tesla ultimately, and if you really take a magnifying glass to the maths and they don't add up, and a Tesla is just as bad for the environment as any other car because of, for instance, the battery and how acidic and poisonous it is to the environment and how you have to dispose of all these batteries eventually, right? So if you and I'm not saying that's the case, I'm just saying hypothetically, if that were true, people still wouldn't care. They would still buy Teslas because of the like perception that you care for the environment. Just put one of these on. And yeah, so that would work a lot. And then the other thing is media. If all these magazines and the newspapers and the New York Times spin it as like, ooh, how cool and intelligent are you to buy these new cars? Oh, and look, so-and-so is doing it and so-and-so is doing it. Of course, everyone would just switch overnight. People are so typically like easily manipulated by these two sources, media and government, that like this could easily be instated, but it isn't, and it won't be, and I don't know why. It's very straightforward thing to address. I'm myself am alone right now in my car, but I never take my car to work. This is like a one-off. I usually either ride a motorcycle and split lanes like a maniac, and yeah, it's or I ride my bicycle and get fit. But the problem with me is like every time when I ride my bicycle, so I did it consecutively for like 6 months, and every time I ride my bicycle I always get into like races on the way, and I don't want like to let other people pass me. And it's not because like I'm ambitious and I don't want other people, you know, ahead of me or anything. It's just because like I want to prove to myself that I'm as like, you know, I'm looking for a challenge kind of thing. Like my life is boring, and so my challenge is to race anyone who dares try to pass me on my bike on the way to work. So, but when I do that, I get like super exhausted, and then over time, yeah. Anyway, my 2 cents on traffic. It's just funny, and you know, I totally think that we could solve it. It's a good example of something that we could solve as a race, um, but we don't, and it's shitty, um, just because there's no real desire to change it. I really think if we have a real desire to, we can change a lot of things, and we can make them very, uh, if not completely optimal, a lot better than they are today. And the reason I say this is because usually when you take a team of people and you give them to do a task, they really try to do much better at it than big governments do tasks. But why is that? Okay, so you're telling me that quality doesn't scale? I don't think so. I think quality can very much scale if the structures are correct, if the governing structures are correct. But they're not, because the foundations are incorrect. For instance, the basic premise that you have to accept that this is the way things are is incorrect. So when you start with that premise, and when you, for instance, go into government work with that premise, with that everything's too complicated, too confusing, and like really hard to change, then obviously there will be very little change, right? When you go into a business premise saying that, oh, anytime real business and marketing people get involved, the quality of a product goes down because they try to, you know, optimize the bottom line. That's also a bad premise to start with. So it all depends on these premises. And you might say, well, that Alex, that is the fundamental premise of business, and if they didn't do that, they wouldn't be doing their jobs well. I don't agree with that. I think in a parallel universe, there's a business that teaches quality and bottom line and soul, and you don't take any of those for granted. Just like you wouldn't like kill someone to get ahead with business. Technically you shouldn't, and many people would be like, no, I would draw the line there. You can just up that line a lot more, and rather than be at like killing someone, that line can be like, oh, I need to really respect this product, respect the users of this product to like a really, really high degree, and then the product quality becomes better. And if the marketers and the people who are not in charge of building the actual product, but the people who are in charge of allocating resources to it, if they have more of a soul, and if they from day one, even maybe as babies, have been taught to value certain things differently, and then in college their like business economics professor like spent a lot of time talking about how you should never sacrifice quality and stuff like that, then maybe they would also do better. But the thing is that they go into college and it's like, well, the world isn't so rosy. Everything is about like crushing this idealism that people have. And I think instead, if you hold true to it, and if you're strong, and if you're stay disciplined, you can achieve really great things. But anyway, look at how a chat about traffic led to these bigger issues. Bye, I'm going inside now because this puffy is warm, but I don't want to spend all night in the car. Also, I'm wearing shorts.